Hi, hello everybody. I am Susan Norwell from Rett University, and I just want to say that we are really excited tonight. We have with us two people from the Communication Matrix group that are going to be leading the discussion. Really amazing tool that I think you will all enjoy hearing about.
Hi everyone, I am Courtney Barnum. I'm an educational specialist for Rett University.
Hi, I'm Lizzie Heimiller. I'm a speech language pathologist, and I also work with Rett University.
Hi, I'm Olivia Samarin. I am a coach at Rett University. And then I'm Deirdre Galvin McLaughlin. I'm a member of the board for the Communication Matrix Foundation and a speech language pathologist.
I'm Jill Tolman. I'm also a board member with Communication Matrix and also a speech language pathologist.
All right, and so I'm gonna get us started tonight. So we're gonna have a pretty quick introduction on the Communication Matrix. And the plan is for us to do another web chat next month where we go into more detail about kind of taking Communication Matrix results and planning intervention. So we're really going to kind of focus on sort of the nuts and bolts of the assessment with the idea that we'll probably go into a little bit more depth next time. So what is the Communication Matrix? So the Communication Matrix is an inclusive communication assessment tool that measures how and why a person is currently communicating. It's inclusive because it's designed to capture progress during the earliest stages of communication development. That can include communication behaviors such as whole body movements to express comfort, or to using two symbols at a time, like on an AAC device, to ask a question. And so where do you find the Communication Matrix if you wanted to use it? It's an online assessment, so you would just go to our website and register for an account. There also is a try it tool if you just wanted to try the assessment without needing to make an account to see if it would be helpful to you before you do that. And so who can complete the assessment? So the Communication Matrix was designed for anyone in anyone's life to complete the matrix. So you don't have to be a trained professional like a speech and language pathologist who might have communication expertise. It can be completed by teachers, it can be completed by other therapists, and then there is also a mode that can be completed by parents and caregivers. And the Communication Matrix has been around for a long time, and we've been really fortunate that we've been able to translate it into many different languages. And you can access a translation by kind of clicking this drop-down box and changing it to the language that you want. It's available online, so like a full website translation in 13 languages or dialects. There's also some printed written translations that are available for other languages too on our website. And so we're gonna just kind of go over how the online assessment works. Basically, the assessment will ask you a yes or no question about if a person is communicating for a specific purpose. So an example of this is obtains more of something, right? So can you tell if your child wants more of something specific? And there are some pictures, video examples, and written examples to try to let you know, for you to try to compare to in case you're not exactly sure what we mean to. And then once you click yes, it will expand down and it will have all the different communication modes that your child might use to communicate. And you basically just check off which one is kind of what your child is doing. So just think So there is also, I don't know why I'm not going back right now. There we go. Okay, so there's also video examples with each of the purposes that are designed to try to illustrate a purpose. So if you're not exactly sure from the written or the picture examples, you can click play on the video example and it will show you a video example and kind of why that
Well, I'm not sure which one you like.
Is acting out that purpose. And so in this example, the teacher's saying, oh, I'm not sure which one you want more of, and she's thinking that the child wants this wheel toy because the child's looking at it and smiling as she looks at it. And so there's also some other health tools that can be useful, especially if you're not a speech language pathologist and you're interested in kind of completing this checklist. So on every screen, there's this tips window that kind of will talk about what different symbols mean and how they might be integrated into communication symbols. There's also this other tip symbol, this other tip window that gives you a little bit more information about what the scoring refers to, so that you can kind of walk through it without having a lot of training in advance. And so the output at the very end, once you answer all these yes and no questions and you check off these communication skills that the child is using to communicate for that purpose, you get a matrix of kind of how they are communicating and why they are communicating. So we have all the different kind of modes for their communication and all the different purposes. And it gives you this snapshot of their overall communication, and it can kind of show you areas where skills are emerging and areas where skills are mastered, and kind of give you a direction to go in the future to scaffold more communication skills. And so because we're talking for Rett University, there are definitely some considerations for children with Rett syndrome that we should be thinking about. The first is that the communication matrix, it is inclusive for a lot of different conditions. It will allow for all the different communication modes, and that can be kind of general body movements to really specific hand gestures or conventional gestures. And so it's important to keep in mind that given how Rett syndrome affects people's ability to move, not all communicative behaviors will apply for a person with Rett syndrome. And ones that I can specifically think of that might not apply are like conventional pointing, waving, or doing some manual signs, because we know that for a lot of people with Rett syndrome, their ability to use their hands is affected. Therefore, the results aren't really meant to be compared across people. It's really meant to be compared within a person to kind of track their progress and capture their communication profile. And I think a really good feature, and I'm going to show you a little bit about what I mean by this later, for the Rett syndrome community is that there is a built-in section where you can write notes on what the person might be doing that would be considered sort of unconventional, like not everyone is doing that gesture to communicate, but it's something that's consistent and understood by communication partners, and therefore it's really important to write down so that it can be communicated to others. So this is an example of a little girl that I have worked with in my AAC program in Boston. She's 2 years old and she has Rett syndrome, and she just uses a lot of different communication modes to communicate that she wants to do more of an action. So I thought it would be a really great example for me to illustrate kind of what I'm looking for when I'm observing someone's communication, and then how I complete the communication matrix to try to capture what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm looking. Cool.
And I should say too, this little girl uses German at home, so she's choosing the word guck, which means look in English. And she's going to be kind of turning to partners, smiling, making eye contact with them, and playing sort of a peekaboo game as we go.
You're looking. Are you looking?
Cool.
Looking.
Oh, we didn't
Come
talk.
on, then. What should I do? What should I do? What do you think?
And I think that part is really cool where she like puts her head down and lifts it up and looks because she's pantomiming. And, it might not look like a iconic pantomime, like if a kid were to like blow a bubble, but she is acting out what she wants. She puts her head down, she lifts it up and does like the peekaboo action. And so I think that's part of the reason I think this is a great video, because even though she can't use her hands, she's engaging in a lot of different communicative behaviors. And so,
Yeah.
this is a video of me completing the communication matrix in like at 2 times speed. So it's pretty fast for just one communication purpose, and I'll pause it as we go. So, I'm thinking about this specific video example. So, during this video, she was asking for a partner to look at her and play peekaboo. So she's requesting more of an action, such as peekaboo. So there's that beautiful written example. I click yes, and then I start to scroll down and I check off all of the communication modes that are applicable. So right here, I checked off smiling, looks at you, and then I checked general body movements because she's moving her whole body to face her communication partner and try to let them know that like, oh, you are the one I want to talk to. And so this is the part I was talking to about before. Then you can write in some of these observations that you saw in this comment section. I skipped over the conventional gestures section because she wasn't using things like beckoning or reaching out because she doesn't have kind of her control over her hands. But I did check off pantomimes because she did act out exactly what she wanted. And I did check off that she was using this symbol for look, and I was writing down that example to try to capture what I saw in my observation. And so I kind of didn't complete any other aspects of the matrix just to give you kind of this pure example of what the end result would look like. So because I just completed this purpose, this is kind of what her matrix for that purpose looks like. She has some skills mastered in this unconventional communication section, which is mostly body movements, and then she has some skills mastered in concrete symbols and abstract symbols. But I wanted to show you this part because if you're viewing the matrix at the end, if you actually click on a cell, that will bring up all the skills that that person does, which can be really nice. And that is where you actually see your notes. So I really like to show people that feature because not everyone knows about it, but I think it can be really helpful later when you're trying to figure out, okay, like what did that person actually do to communicate or use their body in that way? All right, I'm handing it off to Jill.
Thank you. So now we're going to take a few minutes to talk about ways that we all can be using the communication matrix, and then we'll save a little time at the end for some questions. Deirdre, can you advance? There we go. So one way and why we want to use the matrix, as Deirdre said, is to measure how and why an individual communicates at a specific point in time. We know it is widely used around the world. Like Deirdre said, it comes in 13 different languages and is really accessible to all. People typically are commonly using it for IEPs, when it comes time for a triennial, when an individual is first diagnosed with Rett syndrome and getting started on their communication journey, to really document early on how that individual is communicating. Next slide. Oops. Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, Deirdre. It's also great to build consensus about how an individual communicates with a team. What we recommend, and certainly what Deirdre and I do in our practices, is that we recommend that families fill out matrices, that if the child or individual has a caregiver, that they fill out matrices. Sometimes parents will fill them out separately and compare them. Parents may fill them out together, and grandparents will compare them. School teams and intervention teams should absolutely fill them out too. Then when everybody comes together, we can really start to get a picture of how the individual is communicating, and not only that, but what all of their subtle communication and communication attempts can look like in different environments. And in terms of building consensus, yeah, we're perfect here. It's a great way to blend the perspectives and the settings, because if the individual is starting to click their tongue, for an example, and school is reporting that's what they want when they're hungry, or they want to eat, or they've been fed a cracker and they want more, and we document that and have that in the notes, maybe home didn't realize that. So it's a great way to see where skills are emerging in one area and make sure everyone in that child's life and in the individual's life is really tuned in to all of their subtle and emerging communication. It's a great tool to measure and see growth and changes over time. And as we talked about earlier, it's really comparing the individual, obviously, to themselves. Sometimes families can get discouraged or just feel like their child isn't making any progress, or perhaps their progress is slow. But the majority of the time, if not every time, when matrices are compared, you really do see those changes over time. And I think it's really empowering and so important that everyone sees, like, yes, this individual does communicate, is communicating. Look where they were 12 months ago, and now look where they are today. And because it's really embraced in the families and teams that use it, I mean, we have a family who, they just looked at their child's last 8 matrices, and it's just astonishing, and it just is so, heartwarming and truly authentic to see the true communication growth. And to me, that's one of my favorite parts, is to identify how the individual is communicating, and then to really see and have an easy and clear way to document that growth over time. These are 2 examples of a child. With the first matrix was done with the child at the start of therapy. And again, this is what that report will look like once the matrix is completed. And so you'll see on the far left, you have levels 1 through level 7. Anything that's in white is not used. What's color-coded in yellow is emerging. Orange is mastered, and gray is surpassed. So with this individual, when he started and his family completed the matrix, they had really mastered areas of level 1, which was pre-intentional communication. And then they had surpassed level 2. And we will see some, I don't know if discrepancy is the right word, but you'll see where some levels can be mastered or other levels are surpassed. And I think it really shows that our kids, and certainly, individuals with Rett are really beautifully complex, and they have lots of skills, and they may have surpassed skills in one area, and they may never be able to do or hit on skills in other areas. So just exciting to see. And then when you compare it, later to what's on the right, the reevaluation, I mean, this individual has surpassed pre-intentional and intentional behaviors. So much is mastered in levels 3 and 4. And then you see in all other levels that this child has emerging skills. So in this particular child, we want to make sure that that individual's entire team, home, school, community really sees all of the emerging areas. So again, we can talk about something's emerging in one area, making sure that everyone is tuned in to help everyone really understand, help that individual be naturally reinforced for their communication and their communication attempts across environments. If we go on to the next slide, this is just another example where you'll see the different levels, and you'll see some really, really nice growth and progress once intervention has started. Next slide. Deirdre, go back 1 second, because I think the one thing that that we did not touch upon, because we thought that we weren't going to have time, but I just want to throw it in because I think it's super important. So not only is it a great tool to document the individual's current communication skills, it's a wonderful tool to use to identify goals, right? So the whole goal planning, and to identify and expand speech therapy goals, language goals, communication goals, to help families realize, hey, what are some things that we can all work on together is another big thing. So, okay. So there was a quick overview of the communication matrix. During our next session, which will be in July, we're going to talk about intervention planning. So just a nice segue what I was talking about, using the results of the matrix, comparing them with different people who are in the individual's life to do some intervention planning.
That date will be July 22nd.
Thank you. Same time, same place.
Exactly.
So we wanted to open it up for comments and questions that anyone may have.
You can also send them in the chat if you'd like. I know sometimes calling out on here is a little scary.
Yeah. And then we've just listed the URLs for, the matrix itself, for our social medias and YouTube. Heather?
It says the chat is disabled, and it also won't turn on the camera. So I wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
I did have a question. It has to do with, because I've gone online and I've kind of played around with it a little bit. Are you able to get that, I forgot what you called it, the
Like the
printout
Uh-huh.
of, of where they're at? Are you able to get that with just the practice one to see? Because I feel like when I play with it, just to do the practice, I kind of end up going, okay, so I didn't get very much information from that, but I know that there's got to be more to it. So is it a little different if you do the practice than if you do the real, if you get an account and all that?
So I think the main difference, and sometimes this can be a big difference, is between the try it tool, which I think is what you're talking about, like the practice, and kind of how the matrix works if you have an account and you're using it, is mostly like how it's stored. So the try it tool will give you most of the results. I know because I did it today to do that blank matrix, that it definitely gives you like the last view with the big overview picture. And if you click on the cell, it gives you the skills list. If you click on the row, it's going to give you kind of what the percentage of mastery is for each purpose, which sometimes people care about. I'm not sure if it gives you like, sometimes people want like the raw score because it's easier to compare, rather like if people don't make progress visually with the matrix, they can have a number of like how many skills they did out of the total number of skills. I'm not sure if that's available. And definitely some of the other features like our custom reports and sort of the printed skill list and the printed matrix wouldn't be available through that tool. So it is limited. It's meant to like try it. And if you do like by accident close out of the window or refresh your page, like the information you entered is lost because it's not stored. It's just kind of stored temporarily while you're using it.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, you can try again in the chat. We made sure all the settings should be opening up for everybody, so now it's working. Yay! Yeah, so if you don't want to talk or unmute yourself, you can just put it in the chat and ask that, and we'll answer any questions.
We were curious, will people just raise their hands or drop in the chat if you have used it before? Or
That one, not yet. Not yet. I will say, while we're having people fill out, Lizzie and I did one for one of our clients that we share with our school district. And it was very, very interesting to know to see how different, to be very honest, the schools take on things were compared to ours. So it was very interesting to see where we saw some of the language compared to somebody else who doesn't know the child as we do. So I think having multiple people do it is a really good way to have everybody really see across the boards. And the notes part is very good in that as well. Okay.
I think I see a question in the chat.
Yes, Susan's raising her hand too.
Oh, go ahead, Susan.
Can you unmute yourself, Susan?
Oh, I don't know if I can. Let me see. Yes, I can. So I think that probably the significant piece that I take away from what you just said, and I was raising my hand the first time because I wanted you to mention that, is think of the tool as not just an assessment, but also like an instructional. It's really an instructional piece too. So you could sit down with staff at that point and say, this is why we said this is what she's doing. This is a video of what we see and why we would mark that. And I think it helps teachers because when we're working one-to-one with kids, our full focus is on those kids, right? And we all remember what it was like to be in a classroom. It's a little bit busier, and especially in Rett, for example, some of what they do is just so subtle in their communication that if you're not just right next to them, you would miss it, right? And so I think that we can give teachers a little bit of grace, but also instruction, because we want them to be more observant. We want them really looking a little bit more than just at the surface. But when you have those comparisons like you did, I mean, those two were really stark contrasts. You, at least as a support to staff, have the ability to now say specifically, why don't we this week look for this? Or with parents. I found working with parents that if I say, okay, why don't we just look for this week? Why don't we look for how many times she looks at you when she really wants something, And they start to notice it more because you brought it to their attention. So I think that's another piece of it versus just a number or just skills mastered. And I know you're going to get into how to build goals off of it, which I think is also good. But just to have that kind of a instructional piece I think is really important.
And Susan, I would just piggyback off of what you said because, I mean, we know that everyone communicates, right? Some communication may be subtle, and it really helps, I think, break down barriers. And then we're really all focused around the individual. So we, often recommend, and I mean, I certainly do in my practice working with families and teens, we come up with, I mean, we call it gesture dictionary, but lots of the individuals with Rett, they're not truly using gestures, but it really documents when I do this, it means this, I want you to do this. So, I mean, that's something so useful. And then we see individuals, I mean, in such a short time doing the it more because everybody is responding to them.
Right.
So that to me is one of my favorite parts of it, is that it's just really down and dirty, super useful tool, doesn't take a long time to do, tracks progress over time, and really helps us all see, gosh, she's doing this at home, hasn't started doing this at school, or like school will say, she's doing this, this is what it means, and mom will be, oh my gosh, how did I not catch this? So it really is good to then extrapolate that information, have a discussion, and just really help support individuals. So that's one of my favorite pieces.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat that says, how can parents access the matrix? And is there a key that will identify what specific skills correspond to each level?
So parents can create an account. That's probably the easiest way to access the matrix. And you can, if you're like a teacher or a speech and language pathologist or a therapist, and you're wanting them to complete it almost like as a part of a parent report, or to get a picture of what communication looks like at home, or what they, or get their perspective, as Jill was saying, you can actually like invite them to do a matrix. And so that will appear, then they can launch it and complete it. And then it will be in like your shared matrices. And then that profile, the nice thing about it is when you have multiple matrices, you can like line them up on each other. You can see there's actually a tool that shows you growth over time, or you can see the changes across people. It just kind of depends on how you want to use it and like what your purpose is for using it. And there are so many different ones that people use it for. And then the key part of that, I think, so each of those parts, like I went through the matrix really fast where I was like just checking them. Each of those parts has an example. There also is those help tips that I mentioned that you can pop up that's on every screen. There's videos and written examples of like examples of what that communication might look like for a lot of different people. I think there's also some like, it's a criterion reference. So like a checklist assessment, it's not normed or standardized. So I think as long as you are justifying why you chose a specific thing, I think it's appropriate to like have a little bit of nuance and wiggle room on how you're completing the matrix. Just with the idea that like you're trying to capture that person's communication, and if you think like they're communicating for this purpose and using this skill and that's the closest to what they're doing, I think that's totally fine.
I think you just said something that's really important, that this is not standardized. And what's important in the Rett community is there really is no standardized test that's valid for our population. So if parents are out there and they're getting these scores on the whatever you might be giving somebody, there's like all these things, they're really not valid because they're not measuring any communication function. They're specific to people who are able-bodied and typically speaking. And so now our kids right away get these horrible scores, like they're at the 3-month level when they're 5. And that's just hard for a parent to hear, but it's also not helping. It's not like they're ever going to...
Yeah.
If they're never going to achieve some of those items that are on the test. So in this way, you are actually making it so much more inclusive across populations, but also it's valid. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it's actually looking at what people can do, not measuring them against a neurotypical population.
And
And
Susan, oh, sorry, dear.
I was just going to say the thing that I like about the output of the matrix is that if you've mastered one communication mode in that purpose at that level, it's completely orange, which is nice because it's saying you can use lots of different communication modes to do that thing. You don't have to achieve every single skill. It might not be within your repertoire for whatever reason to achieve that skill, but you still have a way to communicate that purpose. And so maybe now we're going to be thinking about, well, can we use a more symbolic way to do that? Or should we move on to another, way of communicating, like another purpose for communication?
And I was going to say, and I apologize, Susan, for interrupting you, and Deirdre for
it's hard not to in a Zoom. I mean, it just happens.
Also interrupting you, but I feel like just going back to what you're saying, Susan, not only are those tests, none of them normed, right? There's not 1 ounce of helpful information that comes out of them.
Right.
All that they do is harm, period.
Yes.
That being said, okay, we also know from the early intervention literature, it's well documented that at the earliest stages of communication, the parents and the caregivers are the best, most accurate reporters because they live with the individuals on a daily basis. So we have that. And then the other beauty of the matrix is we're comparing growth over time for an individual. Right? And so, I mean, it's really a win-win for all and has so many different applications. And, Deirdre and I and everyone who's part of the Matrix, we're so excited, like we said at the beginning, to be on tonight and to be able to share. Any questions that you all have, we're happy to field them later. And we just hope that you'll use it and try it if you haven't tried it. And we'd love to hear any and all feedback that you and the individuals you work with have.
So I think what we're going to say is thank you to you two so much, Jill and Deidre, for being here. And we're looking forward to next month. And anybody having any questions can also get a hold of Rett U, and we can give you some reference points. But thank you very, very much.
Yes.
All right.
All right, so it's July 22nd for our next one. Check out our social media or, our social media or our webpage for rettuniversity.org to have the registration link for the next one. It'll probably be up about, 2 weeks before, Lizzie?
We usually do 2 weeks. Yep.
Yeah, so we'll do 2 weeks ahead of time to register for the next one on July 22nd. And in the meantime, quick question. Can you use with kids under 3? Yes.
Yes. It's specifically modeled off of the earliest forms of communication. So like forms that are typically seen in 0 to 3 months to about forms seen around 2 years old. So it's a perfect assessment for children who are under 3.
And also, just so people know, this will be up on our YouTube channel, right?
Yes. On our social media and YouTube channels.
Right.
Give us a couple days. Things have been a little busy this week.
Yeah, but that way, if you have somebody that you want to see it, you can send them the link to this web chat. All right?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we will see everybody on July 22nd.
All righty.
Have a great night.
Thanks for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.